Next conversion phase we're going to talk about is conversion phase or element fire. The color of the fire element is obviously red. Now, other attributes that belong to the fire element and its interaction in nature and in your physical body would be the season. The season of the fire is the summer, the very hot season where you have long days, long light, and where it's hot. That's the summer. That's the season of the fire. The time of the day for the fire would be midday, because that's where you have the sun at its highest. The period of life of fire is actually the period of late puberty until you stop learning. It's the period of time where you're young, where you're still growing, where you're still learning, where you get to interact with other people for the first time, where you start to create your communicational and your social network. That's the fire element. And that's already a very important part in the fire element. This social aspect is extremely crucial to fire element, because people with a lot of fire element or with this conversion phase fire in a high expression in their system, in their psychology, in their also physical attributes, those people, they tend to be really communicative. They talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, sometimes without anyone being able to stop them. They talk a lot, they like to talk, they like to communicate. The climate factor that has to do with the fire element is the heat. Obviously, summer, midday. The heat is the positive as well as the negative climate factor. Why the negative? Because too much heat actually starts to damage your physical attributes that have to do with the fire elements, which would be the heart. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So the climate factor is warmth and heat. Talking about emotions, the positive emotions of the fire element are things like love, joy, happiness. Negative emotions, for instance, hatred. That's a big difference to the conversion phase wood. Why? In the conversion phase wood, if you remember, I talked about if someone is angry with you, then they explode, and after that, the anger is gone. So they express their anger right out, shove it right into your face, and then the anger is gone. They don't hold a grudge. That's different with people who have a lot of conversion phase fire, because they hold a grudge. Their expression is very outgoing as well, but not in the terms of an explosion. It's sort of this constant burning bushfire that slowly eats away the forest. They hold a grudge if they are angry with you, and it's really difficult for them to get rid of that. So that's something to keep in mind here. The associated organs to the fire element are the heart, the small intestine, the pericardium, and the triple heater. Now, the triple heater, as I already mentioned in the exercises, the triple heater is not an actual anatomical organ. It's a functional organ that the Chinese medicine describes, and it describes the interaction and the balance between the three body cavities, between my lower cavity with all my excretory and my sexual organs, the middle cavity with all my digestive tract, and the upper cavity, everything over my diaphragm, where I have my heart, my thymus gland, and my lungs in there. Those three areas are balanced by the so-called triple heater. The pericardium is the sac that sits inside of my heart, or where the heart sits inside. So the heart is actually resting inside the pericardium. The pericardium protects the heart. The heart and the pericardium are both the in aspects of the fire element, whereas the small intestine and the triple heater are the yang aspects of the fire element or fire conversion phase. There is no single joint associated with the fire element. But if you wanted to associate or attribute a joint to the fire element, it would most likely be the spinal cord on height of your heart. So in the middle of your chest area, just a little bit underneath your scapula, that's where you have the most influence of your physical heart and how it's actually structured inside of your body to your moving structure, to your joints, to your bones. The sensory organ of the fire element is the tongue. Obviously, the tongue has to do with talking. Yeah, you have to move the tongue, otherwise you can't talk. So that's why the tongue is the associated organ, sensory organ to the fire element. The taste of the fire is the bitter taste. The vocal expression of the fire element, that's a very interesting thing, because that's laughing, obviously. In traditional Chinese medicine, they see laughing as a valve, you would say, to release too much of yang energy out of your body. So laughing is a spontaneous release of too much heat and too much energy in your body, but in a very positive way. The body type of the fire conversion phase is also very interesting, because it's completely opposite to the body type of, say, the wood element. The wood element is rather strong skin, almost like leather, turning dark really quickly. Fire element is completely the opposite. Fire element is very fine. It's a very fine element, not that much of like a strong aspect in the physical sense. And you also see it, people with a lot of fire element in their physical expression, they often have very light, almost white skin. They do have problems with getting sunburned rather quickly. Sometimes the skin is so thin you can even see the blue of the veins shining through the skin. So that's a typical sign that you might have a strong expressed conversion phase fire in your system. Other than that, fire is one of the yang elements. So wood and fire, those both are the most yang expression. So wood is the small yang, the so-called small yang, and fire is the large yang, the big yang expression, if you want to combine the yin and yang aspect with the aspect of the 5 conversion phases.